Hi, I'm Dean McBride, a GP Solo member from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and this is Spotlight Solo. Today, we're talking with Lisa Callaway. Lisa's a partner at the firm of Engler, Callaway, Baston, and Schraga in Chicago, and it's a six-person law firm. I like to think of it as a little large firm. So welcome, Lisa, to our very first Spotlight Solo.
Thanks, Deanne. It's nice to be here.
Great. So we're just going to jump right in and tell me a little bit about what are some of the challenges that you all have faced as a small firm or a large little firm?
Yeah, I think, and I've been practicing for several decades, more than three to be a little bit more precise. And so I've had a lot of different experiences. I started off at maybe a 20-person firm. I worked at a very large labor and employment law firm in Chicago. I was in house for 15 years, and then I worked at several little large law firms, let's say. And I think what takes a lot of getting used to, especially when you've worked for a large firm, is having all of these resources and people that you could knock on their door because they had a special expertise in something. It's usually, oftentimes, people who are have been practicing as long as I have, they're not having to do their own research, and so we end up doing a lot of that kind of thing. And I have to say, there are times I'm kind of frustrated by that, but I really do like getting back to those basics because I think any of us, when we first started practicing law, had to do a lot of research, for example. And I think it's always good to do that from time to time to remind you as to why you got into this.
Well, I'm pretty proud of myself as my paralegal skills I think are amazing until I got a real paralegal and I realized that I was pretty so-so at it. So when you're facing a challenge like that, how do you find help? How do you find resources, maybe external to the firm? Let's say you have to ask somebody other than your other five friends.
I mean, talking about the non-administrative tasks, I'm kind of an old traditional lawyer in a lot of ways. Where, well, first of all, I do like to do a lot of things myself. I'm not, I'm someone who's like, okay, I'll figure it out. I'm going to do this. But I won't hesitate to reach out to another lawyer in another firm, or an arbitrator who I know, or a professor, and say, hey, I've got this issue. Can you help me brainstorm on this? And I think people are really hesitant to do that often, and not want to maybe share intellectual capital, but also not want to acknowledge that maybe they don't know the answer. And I've found that people are very, very supportive, and they want, if you've built this network, they really want to be helpful. And the idea is that at some point they might be challenged by something in the future, and hopefully they will reciprocate and call me and want to have that discussion as well. And I really think that that really helps build a nice network. But it also makes for a great legal community, regardless of how large your community is.
Do you ever find yourself having to reach out to someone you don't know and ask them for some support?
Um, I can't. I'm trying to think of a particular situation. I know that that would make me probably more uncomfortable, to have to do that, just not knowing, who the person is, or. But I suppose one way to work around that issue is you're probably going to know someone who knows that person, right? And maybe doing a little legwork in advance of a conversation like that, because usually someone's going to say, "Oh, that woman or that guy is great. Yeah, reach out. They're going to give you whatever you need or be helpful." Or, how about I make an introduction for you? I just think it's absolutely critical that we use resources like this, because it just makes our experience practicing law, I think it makes it all that much more gratifying and robust.
I agree. I've worked really hard to create a reputation as, the coffee king of Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I tell people anybody can call me and I'll show up for coffee pretty much all the time. So some people take advantage of it. Some people think of it more as a threat than as an offer. So I don't know. So I feel like there's a lot of pressure on a solo practitioner or someone in a small firm that we have to grow. We have to, get a ton of new business. We have to be crazy all the time. There's a lot of conversation, of course, I think about work-life balance, but I don't often think that that really gets to the heart of satisfaction, of feeling like enough is enough. Do you have any thoughts on, how do you know how far you want to grow, or how do you know to be satisfied where you are?
I think that the one thing about having a small law firm is that you learn about a lot about yourself. And if you do have other lawyers as partners or equals, I think you learn a lot about them as well. And we were very clear when we went into this business that we didn't want to work crazy hours, and that we didn't want if we obviously have a budget, and people need to make their hours in order to support our budget, but it's not the crazy number of hours that people who work in larger firms are probably accustomed to. And we really wanted people to have flexibility and to make their children or their significant other or travel or whatever was their priorities, to really make that happen as well. And so we've been fortunate enough that we've been able to all have a comfortable living, but none of us are really killing ourselves either. I mean, not that we everybody gets that occasional case where hey, I didn't plan on working until midnight or 2 in the morning or whatever it was, but I would say that is a very rare occasion that we have a much better work-life balance.
I like to think about operationalizing your values. That's what really creates culture. So, is that a thing you've been able to build into your operations, that we know when it's time for you to, go home for the day or shut down for the weekend? Is that something that's just built in culturally, or is it operational?
So, it is somewhat challenging, because even though we say this is what we want to do and this is how we want to run our business, I think a lot of times there is that little voice in the back of every lawyer's head saying, oh, wow, well, I am a lawyer, and I know they're going to, even though they say this, they're going to expect this. So we really try to continually send out that message, to hopefully change people's, thinking, so they really understand that we are truly, this is what we believe, and this is what we want for everybody.
So, what's your involvement been with GP Solo? Are you engaged with the division? Have you used the division for any resources? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, so it's funny. I've been an ABA member on and off over the years, and I've always been, because of my practice, I've been very active. Well, I've been active in the labor and employment division, and then in the state and local government division. And I think it was just around the time of the pandemic, right? Just prior to the pandemic, and something caught my eye, and I might have signed. I think I signed up for GP Solo, but I wasn't really active right away. And I saw that they were going to start doing these weekly calls on Thursday afternoons, and I'm in the Central Standard Time, so for me they're at 1 o'clock. And I thought, wow, and I only live a couple miles from my office, so I was in the office during all of the pandemic, and like I said, sometimes I have to run the payroll, I always have to run the payroll, so it was a lot easier for me to get to the office, but I was here by myself mostly, and so I felt very isolated, and so I started on these calls, and it got to the point, and at the time we were doing them every week, and I looked forward, I still do, to these calls. We're doing them once a month now, but really it gave me this great network, and sometimes we have a topic, and we talk about something in particular. We've had some great speakers, some great presentations, but a lot of times, now over the last year and 8 months, a lot of us have really gotten to know each other, and so we'll kind of say, hey, how's this going, or anybody have any ideas about this? And, while we're kind of all sick of the virtual, we are all over the country, and it's been such a great resource.
That's fantastic. It really is great to hear. I like them too. I think it's a lot of fun and it's great to see people. It's also nice to see people that are not just in my local bar, but I can feel connected to a bigger community. And, I found through some of the stuff that's happening with ABA, I've been able to find people to refer people to or someone to ask a question in another jurisdiction. It's been really great. If you could distill down to a sentence or two, your big legacy advice for another solo or small practitioner, what's that thing you're always telling people or that piece, that tip you're always giving people?
Um, you start out by saying take a breath, but that's really the advice, right? Take a breath. And I think, when I think about how long I've been practicing and I'm like, God, it was like a blink of an eye. I mean, I cannot believe it. I think like everything else, whether it's raising kids or it's a vacation, we move so fast and we're always trying to think of the next thing. And I guess I would say, take a breath, realize what you've done, regardless of what you're doing or where you find yourself. But be grateful for where you find yourself and take a breath and enjoy it because, most of us, especially, if you're practicing by yourself, I mean, that is a huge accomplishment and that is really something. And at some point in your career, you went out and said, I'm going to give this a go and I'm going to see how it goes. And that takes a lot of courage to do that because, you got to pay the bills and that, and now you've added some additional expenses. And so I think, to say, take a breath and look back at what you've built and be amazed by it because you should enjoy it. It's really, really something to focus on, I think.
I'm gonna take that advice for me, and I'm really grateful. Since I'm gonna take a moment for gratitude, I'm really grateful for your time and for the chance to get to know you and make a new friend. So Lisa Callaway, thank you so much for being a part of the conversation and being our first Spotlight solo guest. It's been great to meet you and great to talk with you today.
Thanks, Deanne. I've enjoyed it too, and been great to get to know you as well.
Thanks for clicking on today's Spotlight Solo. Check out GP Solo through the ABA's website, join us for events, and stay connected to your local community. Remember this year's theme, each one, reach one. Stay safe and well. I'm Deanne McBride.